Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. corporatedirect.com.
In a world of twisted facts, alternative narratives, corrupted corporations, and hacked feeds, how can we decipher the difference between truth and fiction? It's time to take back the truth. Read Robert Kiyosaki's Fake and learn the signs to recognize fake money, fake teachers, and fake assets. Determine what's real in a world where falsehoods are a weapon. Don't let fake advice destroy your financial future. Visit TheRealKiyosaki.com to read Fake by Robert Kiyosaki. That's TheRealKiyosaki.com.
This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. It's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. We have a very exciting show right now for you. And I know some of you, or most of you, think, well, it's a time to make New Year's resolutions. And if you're like most people, you've made some resolutions. So I think I'll do this different this year. But the odds are, I'm going to lose 25 pounds. You and I know the odds of that happening are slim to none. Or I'm going to quit smoking, or I'm going to start a new business, or I'm going to save more money, or I'm going to study more. And what happens for most people, it's called BS, blue sky. It's just these thoughts you have, but most people never follow through. I was at a conference long time ago, and there was a guy named Zig Ziglar up on stage. He was one of my heroes. So I was listening to him up there talk from the stage. Never think of that someday I would be up there. But he said to the audience, he says, I'm writing this book for 4% of you. 96% of you will read the book and do nothing. And I thought that was quite an interesting thought from Zig Ziglar, because he's a very nice man. But he was pretty blunt about it. He says, only 4% of you ever get anything done in your life. And that's why most people aren't really that successful. So our guest today is Mr. John Acuff, A-C-U-F-F. He's a New York Times bestseller. He's author and speaker. And his latest book is called Finish. Give yourself the gift of done. In other words, if you say you're going to lose 25 pounds or you're going to make an extra 100,000 this year, how would you feel if you actually did it? That's the big difference. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I find it really interesting when I go to my gym. I've been going to this gym for like 12 years, and the first 2 weeks of January are packed. They're packed. It's crowded. There's not a lot of room to move. And then on that third week, all of a sudden it all lightens up and everybody's kind of disappeared. So one thing that John says in his book, Finish, is that 92% of all New Year's resolutions fail. 92%.
Well, Zig Ziglar was even worse, 96%.
Yeah. And so this is what I love is John's, he wrote a book called Start. In 2013, Punch Fear in the Face, Escape Average, and Do Work That Matters. So he did the book Start, but then he realized that, well, people start. Sometimes that's easy to start, but it's hard to finish. Yeah. So we're going to find out how you finish.
And, if you're going to go to the gym, don't sign an annual contract.
No.
Just go day to day.
That's good financial advice. So, John, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an exciting time of year to talk about topics like this.
So, John, why did you write this book, Finish?
Well, a big part of it was, as your wife mentioned, I wrote Start, and a bunch of people came up to me over the years since and said, hey, thanks for writing that. It helps me, but I've started a million things. Starting is easy. I can, I have 50 URL domain names registered that I've never done anything with. I have a treadmill that I now hang clothes on in the garage. I can start 1,000 things. What does it look like to actually finish? And I didn't have a good answer for my own life. The funny story I like to tell is it took me 3 years to do 6 days of P90X, and that's really not the optimal.
That was that really hyped infomercial on these guys who look like me, and then next thing they look like Schwarzenegger or something.
Well, and I kept meeting people that were good at finishing things like P90X or actually finishing, and so I got really curious and partnered with a PhD named Mike Peasley from the University of Memphis, and we studied nearly 900 people for 6 months to say, okay, what does it take to actually be a finisher? Because that's like another one that's really sad is 81% of Americans, according to the New York Times, want to write a book, and every year less than 1% do. And that has a cost. As you know, you've met a million people that say, Robert, I want to change my finances. It's a cause of stress. It's a cause of heartache. But then they don't, which means they're just going to continue carrying that stress and heartache further into life. And so that's why I wrote Finish, was I wanted to kind of unleash all these people that said, I want to lose weight, I want to write a book, I want to do a business, and give them practical tools that will help them actually complete the thing that matters.
Okay, so you have 3 types of people. People who do nothing, and we all know a lot of them. Today is the same as yesterday, and tomorrow will be the same as last year. They don't do anything different. They're comfortable. Another type of person who starts but never finishes. But the third type of person is somebody who starts and finishes. So what's the big difference between a starter and a finisher?
Well, a big part is that they're not impatient. I'm sure if somebody came to you and said, Robert, it's taken me 10 years to get into this debt. I'd like to be done with it this weekend. You'd say, well, that's not how life works at all. Like you didn't, it took me 10 years to put on this weight. I want to lose it in the next 3 days. You'd say, well, that's really unhealthy. So one really interesting thing is that finishers tend to be more patient with their goals. They understand that, okay, it's not, I'm not going to yo-yo. I'm going to figure out something that's sustainable. And so they get the size right. And sometimes we run into perfectionism where I'll meet people that will say, okay, I'm going to start running. I'll go, great. And they'll go, yeah, I'm going to run a marathon. And I'll go, whoa, have you ever done a half marathon or a 10K, a 5K, even just a K? Have you ever done a K? Get a tiny little medal. And they go, no, I'm going to go do the Ironman tomorrow. And they think they have to have this massive goal, but it cripples them before they even start because it's so overwhelming.
Well,
go ahead.
If I could add a thing about perfectionism, one reason people never finish is they went to school. They're told they have to do it right.
You can't make a mistake.
You can't make mistakes.
No, can't be messy.
You can't be messy. You have to do it perfectly. And, Kim's been married to me for 33 years now, and it's been very messy, hasn't it, Kim?
Well, I would think, John, that's a reason a lot of people don't start, because it's got to be perfect.
Yeah, well, they're overwhelmed, and so what you find is the perfectionist often has the messiest car and the messiest office. And you go, wait a second, I thought they'd be neat freaks. They are, but if they can't clean it down to the toothbrush level, they won't even start. The truest sign of a perfectionist is that they'd rather get a 0 than a C-. So I'll meet people that will say, I want to run 5 miles every day. I only have time for 3 today, so I'm not going to do any. And you want to go, but 3 is infinitely more than 0. And so a lot of it is great finishers have worked through that. They've given themselves permission for it to take a while, and they've given themselves permission that it's going to be messier than it looks on Instagram.
And what I always say, because I'm starting another business like I always start them, but I always tell my friends, I said, I may start it, but I may not finish it because it's going to change along the way. And
you can't possibly predict it.
Yeah, but I've done it so many times that I fail, and then I change direction, and we do it a little differently. So I say that up front to people, look, it's going to be messy, it's going to be nasty. I'm going to screw up all along the way, but somehow we'll get there. That's what I say.
And that's why I kind of drives me crazy when people talk about their 5-year plan. Let me see your 5-year business plan. Well, I don't know what it's going to look like in 5 months, much more 5 years. But they spend all this time putting together this specific, pretty 5-year business plan, and then in the first 2 months it goes left.
Yeah, that's adorable when somebody tells me, here's what's going to happen the next 5 years. I think that is so cute that you think that's how life works. But that is certainly not. And so, yeah, I think a big difference between starters and finishers is They figure out how to do something that's more sustainable. And then I would say the biggest surprise for me was they make what they're doing fun. Over and over again, we saw the importance of enjoying what you're doing. That doesn't mean it's all going to be easy. I think we do each other a disservice where we say, always follow your heart, always follow your dream. It'll be easy, and when it's not, you should quit. It's more saying, okay, this thing I have to do in order to get the results I want isn't inherently fun. How do I add some fun to it?
So, John,
maybe that's like
can I add to that one right now? Because this is the big distinction. I meet people tell me, I want to do what I love and I want to do what's fun. But when most people quit is doing what's fun is oftentimes extremely difficult. For example, the game of golf. You know, Kim loves golf. She has fun playing it. But it's the most miserable, rotten game I've ever played in my whole life. It is not fun for me, but it's fun for her. And that's one of the big distinctions I say to people is just because, and you said it, just because it's fun doesn't mean it's easy. That is the reason I think most people quit, is they equate fun and love with easy and
when it gets hard,
quick.
It's like, oh, it's not fun anymore, I'm going to quit.
Yep.
Right, and it gets harder sooner than you thought.
Yep.
You know, that's why I asked the cashier at the grocery store.
Are you talking about my golf game? It's getting worse, not better.
Well, and you live in the Gulf capital, so I don't know what the problem is. But I asked the cashier, when do people quit their diets at the grocery store? I said, when do people quit? She said, third week of January. And I said, how do you know? And she said, that's when we stop selling kale. And so,
it's like the gym, the third week. Yep, nobody shows up.
If you're going to white knuckle your goal, you're going to hate your goal the entire time. And whether it's finances or food, you're going to be miserable and you're going to quit.
Amen.
You didn't stack the odds in your favor.
When I start my diet at breakfast and I end it at lunch.
And you know, and John, you talk about something interesting too. You talk about, because a lot of people we're taught to shoot for the big goal, that big thing.
BHAG.
The BHAG. I hate that.
BHAG stands for big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah.
This college guy with an MBA came and said, you need a BHAG, and I said, you need to get out of here.
Yeah.
So what's the concept? Because people talk about, I'm gonna shoot for the moon, and the worst case is you'll reach the stars. So it's like they want this big goal. What happens to those people?
Stars.
That's a fun thing to say on like a CrossFit gym wall or a mug, but it doesn't work in life. And here's what happens. So say you want to lose 10 pounds and you only lose 8. Most people psychologically don't feel like they got close to the goal. They feel like they failed by 2 and they quit. So we ask people, if you want to lose 10 pounds, cut it in half and try to lose 5. And then what happened was when they lost 8, they won by 3 and they tried again. Same exact weight. It was just a different way to look at it with your mindset. And so what we found is that I care more about your February than I do your January. I care more about your March than I do your February. I want to help you sustain it over time, whether that's a sales goal, money goal. And so a lot of times when we think, your goal should terrify you, it should be to make $10 million, that overwhelms people and it doesn't actually psychologically pan out. It's much better to have a reach goal. It should inspire you. It should encourage you. But you should be able to win along the way, because failing for a year is not fun. And if you don't have some sustainable way to keep that going, you're going to, quit again. And so a smaller goal sometimes feels lazy at first, but it actually builds a foundation.
So are you saying have the big goal, but then break it down to smaller goals along the way?
Exactly. And give yourself permission to have it be, again, there's 3 things you look at when you look at a goal. You look at the end result you want, the time you're going to do it, and the actions you're going to do it. So if somebody's listening to this right now and they go, hey, I work at a company, they gave me my goals, I can't cut them in half. Amen. Let's talk about the actions then. Let's figure out, okay, what's the dial you control? If you don't control the timeline, you don't control the end result, you control the actions. Let's figure that out. It doesn't mean you don't work hard. It doesn't mean you have big goals. It just means you try to take the smartest approach you can to make sure you actually complete the thing you're doing. If this is your 15th time trying to get out of debt, maybe you need to do something differently.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking to Johnny Cuff. He's a New York Times bestselling author, and he's a speaker. He's the author of the Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller. The book is called Finish. Very important book, especially now at the start of the new year. So all of you who have resolutions, going to start a business, lose 10 pounds, or just make more money or have more fun, very important book to get. The book is called Finish. So, John, tell me the truth here. What was your biggest thing you needed to get done and you finally finished?
Well, I would say that writing
This
my
book.
first, probably, yeah. Like this is, for me, I carried around I was a wannabe author, you know. It's fun to tell people you're working on a book because you don't even have to be working on it. You just get to say it at dinner parties and people congratulate you. They go, oh, good for you. And they don't even know if I've written a single word. And so for me, breaking that first kind of feeling of, I think I can actually do this, and I know it's possible because millions of people do it like every year. And so that was, for me, the first big one. There's been other ones like running a half marathon or doing things like that I've always wanted to do. But I would say writing a book and then sustaining that to now I've written 6 different books and I'm working on a 7th. That's been the goal that's kind of pushed me along.
So I'll tell you what Mark Twain said. I love this saying. Mark Twain says, when people want to know how to get ahead, he says, just get started. So a lot of people want to get ahead, but they never start. And the second thing is they never finish. So we come back. We'll be talking more to Johnny Cuff. He's the New York Times bestselling author and speaker of the book Finish, it's Wall Street Journal #1. And he says the reason people don't get ahead is, number one, they're impatient. They quit before they get ahead.
Which applies to a lot of young people today. They want instant gratification, as many of us do, but that's not going to pave the way for success.
Correct. And they're perfectionists. It's got to be done perfectly. They got to do it their way, or everything must go their way. And I'm guilty of all of those things. So when we come back, we'll be talking more to Johnny Cuff, the author of Finish. For those of you right now, while we're going to break, think about this. What would you like to start? But more importantly, what would you like to finish?
You're listening to The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
What is your number one expense in life? Your number one expense. It's taxes. And I've asked the question is, how come there's no financial education in school, but why isn't there education on taxes either? You know, they tell you to save money, which is stupid. They tell you to invest in the stock market, which is stupid. But won't they teach you about taxes? So here we have Rich Dad advisor Tom Wheelwright. We're talking about his revision for his book, Tax-Free Wealth. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Robert.
So what's the Tax-Free Wealth about? What's different this time? It's a revised edition.
Well, so what we did was this is the first major tax reform we've had in 30 years, 2017.
Was 86 was the last one?
86 was the last one, back when I was in Washington, D.C.
So many guys got wiped out because of that tax change.
They did. It wiped out an entire industry, savings and loans. This new tax law is just as big, but in a very different way. It affects different industries. You know, the tax law is always a series of incentives. And the question is always which incentives and which ones apply to me. And so the key to revising tax-free wealth was, what changed so much in this new tax law that we can absolutely take advantage of? Seriously, the amazing incentives. For example, the bonus depreciation, for example, for real estate is unbelievable. You buy a $1 million apartment, get a $300,000 deduction or more the very first year.
So if you want to make more money and pay less taxes like Donald Trump and myself, get Tom's book, Tax-Free Wealth.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. corporatedirect.com.
Your financial education continues. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Radio Show.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And, of course, you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes or Android. And all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. Now, why do we archive it at richdadradio.com? Well, because we're an education company. We don't make any recommendations like buy this stock or that stock or sell this, do that. Well, we go there because we're an education company, and one of the ways you learn is by repetition. Like you don't learn to be a great golfer taking one golf lesson or practicing once. So we archive our programs at richdadradio.com so you can listen to it again, because this is a very important program. Our guest today is John Acuff. He is the New York Times best-selling author. He's also the author of the Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller, Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Done. But also you want to do this because this program, you may have some people who don't get started. They don't do jack. And when they start, they don't finish. They're probably your kids or your brother-in-law or somebody that works with you. I mean, how many people know people who show up to work, but they went home before they got to work? They're not even present. So anyway, this is not about age or anything like that. It's about people. And as Kim says, the busiest day of the busiest month at the gym is January. And it's empty in February because
That's
everybody
right.
realizes it's too hard to keep exercising and diet. So any comments, Kim, about John's book, Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Done? Get something done, you guys.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about, the big goals versus setting smaller goals to get to the big goal. And even this morning as I was reviewing the book, I was thinking about meditation because I want to meditate every day. I want to just make that a habit. And I go off track and I don't do it. And then I do it and I don't do it. And I was told to meditate 20 to 30 minutes a day. Well, in looking at John's book, I'm like, well, what if I just do 5 minutes? Let's just start with 5 minutes a day. Let me start there. And I could do that every day. And then we'll see where that goes. But so thank you, John, because already I've gotten one little gift from your book because I'm just going to start a little smaller goal and make this into a habit.
That's great. That's great. It's funny you mentioned meditation. I had a goal to do meditation 10 minutes a day. I said, well, if I can do that, I can do 15 minutes. And I stopped the very next week. Haven't meditated since. And all I did was increase it by 5 minutes, but it was enough that my threshold of I can't find an extra 15 minutes suddenly was triggered, and I thought, you know what, I'm too busy. So it's funny that the kind of the little moments we need to go, okay, 10 is enough, 5 is enough, I'll build on that versus going, I should constantly increase it or it should be massive. I think that does get in our way sometimes, and it's okay to start with a 5K and build.
Any suggestions for people who start but don't finish?
Yeah, I think a big part of it, scientists kind of look at two things that motivate us, two broad things, reward and fear, or maybe consequence if you don't like the word fear. So if you go to a doctor and you want to get in shape and they know you're a reward person, she'll say, look, if you get in shape, you'll be able to hike this summer with your spouse, and that'll mean a lot to them. Or you'll be able to go on all the rides at the amusement park with your son, and that'll mean a lot to them. If they know you're a consequence person, they do the reverse. They say, hey, if you don't get in shape, it won't be as easy to play golf. Or if you don't get in shape, you might develop the same health issues your mom had. And so a big part of when you're trying to actually finish something is to tap into that and go, okay, when I look at my goals, am I more motivated by a little reward, or am I more motivated by understanding a consequence? The consequence could be as simple as I got a new project at work, and I'm going to volunteer to update the entire team on Friday, every Friday, because I know on Thursday it'll really put the fire under me that I better have done some stuff that I can update them with. A reward, if you're a parent, can just be going to a movie by yourself without your kids. That is the greatest suburban luxury known to mankind. You walk in and go, just ticket for one. Like, you can't believe it. So I think a big part of actually finishing is going, along the way, what do I need to encourage me? We tend to think motivation will be enough and will grow, but you've worked with too many people to know that the motivation is the highest at the beginning, and then it kind of ebbs and flows, and your
Why is that?
About to be consistent.
Why is that, John? Why doesn't motivation work?
Well, motivation at the very start is the highest it's going to be because that's the main reason you're starting. So it's at this peak, and we believe this myth that it'll only grow as you go, but it tends to disappear. We did a study. We took thousands of people online through a goal study, and the day that most people quit, if you ask somebody, they'll go, what, day 15, day 20? It was day 2. They quit on day 2 because on day 1, the goal is just a fantasy. It's fun to say, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to get in shape, I'm going to change my money. And then day 2, the work starts, and motivation goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. I thought this was just a thing we were saying on Instagram, new year, new you. Like, I didn't know we were actually going to get our hands dirty and it was going to be uncomfortable. And so you have to be ready for that and not surprised by that. And I think that's a big key.
Well, that's a very good point, because when people think about setting a goal, they're often trying to solve a problem. Like, I want to lose 20 pounds, but there's a problem underneath the 20 pounds. And I think what happens to people is they run into the problem. It could be an addiction. I want to stop smoking is the addiction, which is both mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. So they're running into the problem. In my opinion, that's why people quit, because they hit the real issue is not the weight, it's the addiction.
I think you're 100% right. The analogy I use, in the bird world, there's a bird called the cuckoo. We've all seen it on the clocks, but it's an actual bird, and it's what's known as a parasitic brood, which means it doesn't build its own nest. It finds a nest that has eggs in it, and it puts its egg in there. Now, the mother bird of this other species doesn't know, that there's an extra egg in there, and that cuckoo hatches first. It's got a faster incubation cycle. And the first thing it does is kill all the other eggs. And then the mother bird often dies from exhaustion from overfeeding this gigantic species. If you ever go online and type in cuckoo parasitic, you'll see these crazy photos where it's this tiny bird feeding this Jabba the Hutt bird that obviously has nothing to do with it. And I relate that to the lies we tend to believe about ourselves. And I see this all the time, where, those emotional lies where I'll work with executives that will tell me, well, I'm getting a new opportunity, but I'm not creative. And what happened was when they were 14, some teacher told them, you're not a good artist. And they accepted that and still are operating against that. Or I meet people, especially in the Southeast. I had a guy at dinner tell me, that CEO makes $5 million a year. How do you think he sleeps at night? And I wanted to say, probably on Hungarian down pillows, probably very well. But in his mind, there was a certain amount of money that was acceptable. And then if you went past that line, you were selfish or greedy, and he had this secret rule about that. So whenever he got close to success, he would self-sabotage to get back within that rule. And so I think you're right. We might think it's about weight. We might think it's about 10 pounds, but it might be that we had somebody criticize us and tell us something that we've believed. And much like the bird in the nest, the more time we feed that lie, the bigger it grows until we're just exhausted.
And we see this all the time, John, in our business, and the emotion, what you call the secret rules, these beliefs that people have. They don't know they have. They're oftentimes unconscious beliefs. So in your book, how do you identify what these emotions are that are sabotaging you?
Well, there's definitely some self-awareness involved where, the book talks about simple things like saying, well, what does that mean? Like to write down a secret rule of, okay, like for me, I had a successful blog and a couple years ago, and the secret rule I took from that is if an idea doesn't blow up within the first week, it's not a good idea. And if I stopped and said, well, what does that mean? That every idea is going to have that same exact path? Like, of course not. It might take some ideas that are good years to come to fruition. That doesn't mean they're a bad idea. So I think you can ask yourself a series of questions, but I think that much like you guys know, relationships matter. Sometimes we need somebody in our circle, in our friend group, that loves us enough to tell us the truth. If they care about you, we'll be able to say, yeah, these last 3 job opportunities, the same thing happened. I wonder if there's a secret rule there. Or, hey, whenever you get to this one place, I think you sometimes think you're not good enough to deserve that, and I think you self-sabotage. We need other people because the problem is often we're so close to our own painting, we can't see what it looks like. Our nose is an inch from the painting, and we need some friend who's standing 10 feet back to go, oh, those are water lilies. That's what you're looking at. That's, and for you, it's just a blurry dot. And so I think relationship is such an important part of this whole journey.
Once again, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking to John Acuff, New York Times bestselling author, speaker. And his latest book is Wall Street Journal bestseller, #1 bestseller, Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Done. And we're talking about most people don't do jack. Some people start and very few people finish. So for all of those right now who have a New Year's resolution, I'm going to lose weight, quit smoking, make more money, quit drinking, or start a new business, this is your book. This book is called Finish. It's a fantastic book. It's simple. It's clear. The question is, will you finish it? That's the big question. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I have a question, John, because we talk about the millennials and all the Gen Y and all of this, and you mentioned that one of the keys is patience. You got to be patient. Well, I know a lot of kids that they already think they're the best. They don't think they need to go through this process. They show up and expect everything to already be finished for them, and they're the superstars and they're the heroes.
Well, I let the kid with an MBA in this, so I have an MBA and you don't. I said, yeah, and you know I don't have a job. That's the difference, because I own the company, you don't. And they don't know how to own the company. Any comments there?
So
John?
how do you deal with that attitude?
Well, I mean, I think, like we said, it's an attitude that unfortunately isn't just one age group. It often tends to be human. Where I see it in older generations is, okay, I had an executive position until I was 44, and my company got sold. I no longer have a job. I have to have that exact position again, and it might be the reality is you got to climb a different ladder, and it's going to take some time. So I think a big part of that, like one of my favorite questions to ask people that are in that position is, tell me about something that worked for you before. Tell me about a goal that worked, a time you won. Because I think we're really terrible at taking forward the things that work in our lives. So even if you come to the job going, I know everything, I'm not going to dig into that because there's stuff that's psychological and emotional. It's going to take forever.
Right.
My job as your leader is to help you win again. And so, like, you guys see this, I'm sure, where I'll see people that are, they go, I want to get in shape, but I don't know how. And I go, well, tell me about a time you won. And they'll tell me all these really specific disciplined things they did to get out of debt and work on their money. And I'll go, what if you could translate just a couple of those into the financial portion? But we tend to silo our lives. So whether it's a millennial that's, coming in thinking they know everything or a 44-year-old that's starting over again, I try to engage them in the idea that you've won before, and you know what? It felt really good. Like, I want you to feel that again, and I want you to work for it. I want you to earn it. I want you to know it's possible. I don't want you to think it's immediate, but I want to help interview you so that you can get some of those things out and then do the work of going, where I am now, how do I apply those?
I would suggest for all of you out there, you talk about 44-year-olds. There's a lot of guys my age, baby boomers. They got jacked, man. They have no money. They're counting on Social Security, and they got nothing in savings or any kind of retirement. Those guys are in serious trouble right now. So I think the first thing that people should do is get your book, and I think that would be a great start for most people. Any comments, Kim?
I just have one last question for you, John. Is, a lot of people, when they're starting goals, some people don't even know what they want. And you talk about how to pick the right goal versus the wrong goal. How do you pick what's the difference between the right goal and the wrong goal to start with?
Well, yeah, a big part of it is that what we talked about, that self-awareness. I think that one of the most distracting things you can do is you don't really want, even if you thought it. And so maybe it's something you've always been told, you'd be a great lawyer. And the worst situations are where I meet a 24-year-old who's about to graduate from law school, and they said, I knew when I was 19 I didn't want to be a lawyer, but everybody said I'd be a good lawyer, and now I have $200,000 in debt, and I don't want to be a lawyer. And so I think doing the exercise of really spending time going, okay, what do I currently want? What gives me joy? Getting your hands dirty. Robert, you said it's an $11 book on Amazon. So if you're a boomer and you're going, I'm stuck, I think the one thing I'd say is remember it's not too late. If you've got breath, you've got time. And so I think the lie of if I had started, it's what people get depressed by compound interest when the example is, if you started investing when you were a fetus, you'd have $42 billion. And they go, but I'm 40 years older than that. I think we have to remember it's not too late.
That's the impatience part. Once again, John, thank you very much. Keep up the good work. Keep writing those books. So thank you. And we'll come back.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
And we'll come back. We'll go on the next
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Get those resolutions. And we'll come back. We'll go on the next popular part of our program. It's called Ask Robert.
You're listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. Corporatedirect.com.
Financial freedom begins with financial education. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Radio Show.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Once again, you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes or Android, and all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them because we're an education company. We don't make recommendations like buy this or sell that. But we do that so education means repetition is how you learn best. And this is a very important program because it's Happy New Year 2019. And we had John Acuff on. His latest book is called Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Done. And as you know, at the start of New Year's, everybody makes these resolutions that they never keep. So that's why the first resolution would be to buy his book and read the book and finish the book and give yourself the gift of done. So if you have friends, family members, or business partners who need to do some soul searching and make some changes, with a New Year's resolutions for the new you, for the new year, I think a good start would be getting this book called Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Done. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I think this is a really great book. It's a lot of practical things because how often have we met somebody, Robert, and they say, "Oh yeah, I'm starting this," and then 2 years later we meet them. "Oh yeah, we never quite finished that." John says that 92% of all resolutions fail. So this is just really good practical advice. It's not necessarily easy. It's a lot of common sense. It takes, as he says, patience. Instead of having these big audacious goals that scare the heck out of you, chunk it down to smaller goals that you can accomplish and win at. I mean, it's not rocket science, but it's a lot of good information.
So you can submit your questions to Ask Robert at richdadradio.com. So we'll now get the first part of this program, which is the most popular part. What's the first question, Melissa?
Our first question today comes from Madison in Kansas City. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Robert and Kim, love listening to the show. My question is for you both. What are some of the things that you each do to overcome obstacles in your businesses?
That's a fantastic question. And I'll just say it's called one word. The question is, what is Rich Dad, Poor Dad about? I'm glad it's your favorite book, but what is it about? And the book is really about accounting. Another word is called accountability. And the reason when people start something, they can quit because they're not held accountable. They don't do it because they're not held accountable. So my problem, since I'm addicted to eating, I eat when I'm upset. So I realized I was addicted to it. So when my medical doctor, Dr. Rhoda Gopalan, and his fiancée, Nicole, said they wanted to take my health into their hands, it was important because health, I had to be accountable. You see, I can be not accountable. And the reason people don't get things done is because most of the problems they have in their life are addictions, like the addictions to smoking, drinking, eating, sex, shopping, whatever the things are. And the same thing in business. You're not held accountable to your numbers. So recently, people have been saying to me, how come you've lost so much weight? Well, I'm not really trying to lose weight. I'm just being held accountable. So I got to go see Radha Gopalan, Dr. Radha Gopalan. He's a heart transplant cardiologist who encouraged me to learn meditation, which I've been meditating now for 4.5 years. But also his fiancée, Nicole, holds me accountable. And, she's tough. She's the nicest, sweetest person. But I know I got to go talk to Nicole. If I didn't have that accountability, I would never have lost weight. And I'm not trying to lose weight. What she's doing is taking care of my health. And so I have to do all these supplements and this and that. And twice a year I go on what's called a 21-day cleanse. It's not a fast, it's a 21-day cleanse where I flush out my system from all the toxins that we get from eating, drinking, and just breathing today. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad is about accountability for your numbers, but your health is also accountability, and so is your happiness about accountability. And so, Kim and I always talk about we should have more fun, which for me is tough sometimes because my work is really fun. It's challenging. It's hard. Remember that just because it's fun doesn't mean it's easy. Like golf is fun, but not easy. But I think it's getting your head straight around the idea that you need, if you're going to make a change in your life, somebody's got to hold you accountable, somebody else other than you. Any comments, Kim?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Madison asked the question, how do you overcome obstacles in your business? And our business is just one big obstacle. It's like every day there's obstacles we're facing, and thank God we have obstacles, because then we learn from them. I mean, it's like this. It's the same question so many people ask: how do you handle mistakes? Well, we always have had the thought that there's something here to be learned, and this is how we're going to grow, and our business is going to get better. So overcoming obstacles, I feel like there's a lot of fear in her question, like, how do you, I'm afraid to make obstacles, I'm afraid to make mistakes, I'm going to have problems. Well, yeah, you're going to have problems, you're going to have obstacles, because that's how the business is going to grow, by overcoming them.
And I think a lot of people have that, that saying, and they lived happily ever after again. When I solve this problem, I'll live happily ever after again.
And the next problem comes up.
Every time I solve a problem, I just have a new problem. But if it's not fun, and fun doesn't mean fun like ha 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 and sitting at a comedy club. Fun means I love doing what I'm doing with who I want to do, and I want to do it, and it's challenging. It's still hard. But the accountability part is crucial. So if you want to get your numbers and your money in place, hire a bookkeeper. Put your numbers down on a piece of paper, like it says in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Play the cash flow game and hold yourself accountable with your bookkeeper. You will find life transforming, because all of your subconscious hopes, doubts, fears, and addictions will float to the surface. That's why meditation is so crucial, because I've been meditating for 4.5 years now, and without that, I couldn't face the addictions I have. So it's really about accountability. That's why they're called accountants. Or I see Nicole, who is a doctor of nursing. She holds me accountable twice a year to cleanse my body out. And it's hard because all my addictions, all my toxins, all the things that are wrong with me float to the surface, and I've got to look at them. It's not about just losing 25 pounds. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Dominic in San Jose. Favorite book, Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. So my wife and I have different approaches regarding finances. What is your advice on how to go about changing someone's mindset?
And my advice is good luck.
Yeah,
man, I tell you.
that's what I would say.
I tell you this, I think John Acuff, again, he's the author of the book, Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Done. He talked about one of the most psychotic subjects is money. It is one of the most psychotic, emotional, addictive subjects there is. You run into all kinds of garbage when it comes to the subject of money. The thing I always say is this, that there's many ways to get to financial heaven, but there's more ways to go to financial hell. And the fastest way to go to financial hell is marry somebody who's not aligned with your financial goals. Right, Kim?
That is correct. I mean, if you are not aligned financially, if you're not aligned on any of your goals, the chance of success is like zero. But I would also say to Dominic, trying to change someone's mindset, nobody can change anybody's mindset. That happens within them. You can give them tools and books and lead them to look at things, but it's up to them whether they're going to look at them and whether they want to make a change. If they don't want to make a change, they're not going to change. It's got to come from them. So I wish you well, Dominic.
So I tell you what, money is one huge psychotic subject. And the biggest mistake that people make is say, well, when I'm rich, then I'll be happy. Never happened, Joe. Never happened. We have a friend, right, Kim? He's retired, a young guy. He's retired. And he's the happiest guy on earth. But he's also the most boring guy on earth because all he talks about is being, doing stuff. And he can't understand why we're working. He says, don't you guys have enough money? I said, hey, it's not about the money. But he can't understand that.
He says, why aren't you retired? You should be retired because there's so much to do when you're retired. And we're like, well, we love what we do, so we'll probably never retire. Oh, but you're missing out on so much. I can't imagine working all my life. Well, obviously he didn't like doing what he was doing and he couldn't wait to retire. And that's the difference. I mean, that's a lot about what John's talking about in setting your goals. You've got to be excited about your goal. It's got to be something you really enjoy and want, versus just making money and surviving.
So the thing that keeps me going personally, because Kim and I have more than enough money. That's not the issue. And we had nothing when we started. But it's really about what is your mission in life? And so if you and your wife are not lined up on the same mission, then you're probably never going to go to the same place.
That's a really good point.
So Kim and I are very clear on our mission and our goals. Our goal is when the time we pass this earth, at one time it was to donate $1 million a year. When we blew past that one. Another goal was to donate $10 million a year for years. We blew past that one. So now it's $100 million a year. And we haven't got there yet, but we're getting close to it.
But it's a good goal. It keeps us going.
Yeah, so Kim and I stay aligned to that, and we're also aligned to our education. We meditate, we study spiritual books and things like this. But that's what keeps us going. I have friends who their husband and wife are not aligned at all. They have a common enemy called themselves. So with that, you may as well just, as Steve Martin, the comedian, once said, he says, you may as well just punt on first down. Give it up now.
But that's a really good point, because there's got to be a bigger purpose for you coming together as a couple versus just having kids and getting a house and doing that. There's got to be a bigger purpose as a couple for you to come together. And I like that being more than trying to change somebody's mindset.
Well, as I say, the number one cause of divorce is the kids leave the house. Because once the kids leave, they find out they have an enemy in common called the other spouse, and as long as they had the kids, it was kind of the kids were the glue.
Yeah.
But as soon as the kids start turning 15 or 16, the real issue in the marriage starts to float to the surface. And if that's not judged, if that's not handled at that time, and we're not therapists or psychiatrists and all that stuff, or marriage counselors, if you don't have it that way, you may as well call the attorney and start splitting the assets up. Anyway, life's not easy, and just because it's fun doesn't mean it's easy. And I thank you all for submitting your questions to richdadradio.com, and thank you all for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.